girl left the hotel and disappeared without a trace. She had to walk a short distance on a straight road out of the city center, but it was as if she had never left at all. The search led the investigators to a series of disturbing discoveries, puzzling moments, and unusual circumstances. This case remained one of the most mysterious disappearances for many years, until finally the unexpected truth came to light. Brittany Drexel was born on the 7th of October 1991 in Rochester, New York. Her parents separated when she was still small. Less than a year later, her mother married Chad, who became like a father to Brittany. The couple had a daughter, Marissa. Due to Chad's military career, the family had to move frequently. After ending his service, Chad settled with his family in a suburb of Rochester called Chile. From early childhood, Brittany was diagnosed with a rare condition of the right eye. Despite several operations, the problem could not be completely solved, and eventually the girl lost vision in this eye. But Brittany never lost her zest for life and hid her problem with contact lenses. She led an active life, spent much time outdoors, and had a passion for sports. During her school years, she fell in love with soccer and achieved considerable success in this sport by becoming part of the local women's team. Brittany, who was still wavering between a career as a nurse, cosmetician, or model, experienced her parents' divorce at the age of 16. This event was a challenge for both her and her younger sister, but nevertheless, she maintained a positive attitude toward life and kept in contact with her father by meeting him regularly. When April of the year 2009 came, Brittany and her friends planned to spend spring break in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Brittany's mother was against it, worried about possible risks. When she learned about the travel plans to a city that was more than 1,000 kilometers from home, and moreover without adult supervision, she felt real concern, which led to a big argument with her daughter and to them not speaking to each other for days. In mid-April, Brittany told her mother that she wanted to spend a few days with a friend on the shore of a nearby lake to relax and sort out her thoughts. Her mother, who thought the lake was not far away, allowed her to. But in reality, Brittany used this moment to secretly travel with her friends to Myrtle Beach without telling her mother. She was convinced that nothing bad would happen and that her mother was simply overly worried. Finally, they met with her friends and set off on the 13-hour journey by car. Upon their arrival, they took a cozy 2-star hotel, the Bar Harbor Hotel, right on the beach in the city center. Brittany was thrilled with her trip. She enjoyed the time on the beach, the walks through the city, and the general relaxation. Upon her arrival, she immediately called her mother to assure her that she was fine, although she did not mention that she had traveled to another state. She assured that she and her friends would take a walk in the evening and then watch a movie at home. On the 25th of April, Brittany contacted her mother again to tell her that she would return home the next day. At 8 o'clock in the evening of the same day, Brittany went to visit an old friend from Rochester who was staying in a hotel about 2.5 kilometers away. Just as she arrived, she received a message from a friend. The day before, Brittany had lent her shorts, and now the friend asked to return them because she wanted to wear them. Although she was disappointed to have to return, Brittany left her friend's hotel and made her way to her own. On the way, she texted with her boyfriend John, who originally wanted to come along but couldn't because of a side job. Brittany expressed her displeasure about the situation with her friend and suddenly stopped responding to messages, which worried John. He sent her several more messages and tried unsuccessfully to call her. Then the young man contacted her girlfriends, who also knew nothing about her whereabouts, and noticed that she was not responding to their calls. Worried that something serious might have happened to her, he decided to inform her mother, although he kept the trip secret. When John reported the situation, Brittany's mother was shocked to learn that her daughter had traveled without her knowledge and immediately contacted the police to report her disappearance. Then she set off for Myrtle Beach, followed by her ex-husband, to help search for their daughter. The morning after the disappearance, Myrtle Beach police began questioning Brittany's friends. They determined that the girl had left her hotel room around 8 o'clock in the evening. At 6:30, she was spotted by surveillance cameras in the lobby of the hotel where her friend lived, and at 8:15, she left the building. The police officers tried to find more surveillance cameras along Brittany's presumed route, but without success. Friends of the young man with whom Brittany spent the evening reported that they watched a baseball game together, which Brittany joined toward the end. 15 minutes later, she explained that she had to return because a friend had asked her to return shorts. Her friend offered to drive Brittany, but she preferred to walk since it was already getting dark. Based on the camera data, the investigators concluded that the young people she was with most likely had nothing to do with her disappearance. The recordings show that Brittany left the hotel alone and no one followed her. When examining Brittany's room, the investigators noticed that apart from her handbag and her phone, all her things remained in place, suggesting that she did not intend to leave forever. Minutes before her disappearance, she expressed dissatisfaction with her girlfriends in a message to her boyfriend and shared that she intended to drive home the next morning and go to sleep after returning to the hotel. The police began investigating the events of that fateful evening. Brittany left a friend's hotel at 20:48 and sent her last message to her boyfriend at 21:15. This shows that she disappeared only a few walking minutes from the hotel. The police found a street camera near the last known location, but she did not appear on the video, which made her disappearance even more mysterious. The investigators also learned from the mobile phone provider that the girl's phone was switched on until the early morning hours and was last switched on 90 kilometers before Myrtle Beach on Highway 17. This is concerning, as the region where the phone was last active is known for its difficult-to-access areas. Search teams, including helicopters and quads, were sent there, but unfortunately no traces of Brittany were found. 11 days later, the search operation was discontinued due to lack of prospects for success. At the same time, the police continued their search in Myrtle Beach and noticed the strange behavior of Brittany's female friends, who suddenly moved to another hotel and avoided any contact with the relatives of the missing person. Despite initial moments of suspicion, no connection of the women to Brittany's disappearance could be established. They had even tried to contact her that evening. Finally, the investigators' attention turned to another acquaintance of Brittany's whom she had met the day before her disappearance. Despite his strange behavior, he came to the police voluntarily, and the absence of direct evidence also made it possible to remove him from the list of suspects. In the following weeks, the case was largely covered in the media. The police released surveillance video footage, hoping for help from citizens. Brittany's parents actively participated in television programs, including broadcasts on national channels. The story was also highlighted in a well-known television show about missing persons. Although the efforts attracted attention and many tips came in, none of them helped the investigators get closer to finding the girl. At some point, they decided to recheck all men with a past connected to certain violations in Myrtle Beach. This process took a long time but did not lead to success. The main problem was the absence of any concrete evidence, which made it almost impossible to determine the identity of a possible perpetrator. In December of the same year, 8 months after the beginning of the case, the investigation unexpectedly received a new clue. A tourist couple camping in a tent near Georgetown found a pair of women's glasses and handed them over to the police. It turned out that the glasses belonged to Brittany, but no DNA traces were found on them. Brittany's mother moved closer to Myrtle Beach to stay in contact with the progress of the investigation. In June of the following year, the case received a new chance for resolution. A 20-year-old woman was walking on a street in Myrtle Beach when she got into an unpleasant situation. 2 men got out of a van that stopped in front of her who tried to involve her in an unpleasant event. However, the woman was able to escape further actions and immediately contacted the police. The investigators quickly arrested one of those involved in the incident, 37-year-old Timothy Taylor. Given the similar circumstances in Brittany's case, they immediately began to check his involvement. The police spent 5 months determining his connection to the case, but ultimately concluded that he probably had nothing to do with Brittany's disappearance. In the following years, the police checked several more tips. They searched the apartment of a possible perpetrator and explored an island area near the river due to a tip from a local angler, but found nothing. In the year 2014, The police found some objects near the place where the signal from Brittany's phone was last registered. Initially, it was assumed that these might be connected to her disappearance, but it soon turned out that they belonged to another case. In the year 2016, the FBI expressed that the chances of finding Brittany were low. The officers suspect that she was brought to the place where the last signal of her phone was registered, and an incident happened there. The FBI also announced a reward of $25,000 for information that could contribute to solving the case. A few months later, there was an unexpected turn in the case. Attention turned again to Timothy Taylor, who was involved in suspicious activities in Myrtle Beach in 2010. Surprisingly, his 16-year-old son Deshaawn appeared as a new suspect. An FBI informant who was in a correctional facility in South Carolina shared an interesting story about how on the 27th of April 2009, he participated in a meeting in a forest house where persons were present who were engaged in questionable business. He was supposed to hand over money to Timothy Taylor, but experienced a disturbing scene in one of the rooms. There, Deshaawn and 11 other persons were involved in activities that are better not spoken about. The informant saw how a girl tried to leave, but Deshaawn convinced her to return. Later, he heard several loud noises from another room and saw how they tried to eliminate traces of their activities. After returning home, he saw a report about Brittany in the news and realized that he had seen her. An unexpected turn occurred when a second witness appeared who confirmed the statements of the first. He claimed that Deshaawn was indeed involved in the previously mentioned events and had brought Brittany to that house that was already mentioned by another witness. According to his statement, Deshaawn hoped to gain an advantage from his actions, but when the matter became known, he tried to cover up traces so as not to be found. These two witness statements corresponded with the version considered by the investigators. The witnesses claimed that the events they described took place 2 days after the last time Brittany was seen in the area where Deshawn's father's house is located. However, the investigations were complicated by the complete absence of evidence material, and only the words of witnesses, both with questionable credibility, were not sufficient to bring charges. For this reason, the investigators decided to arrest Deshaawn in another case. In the year 2011, he was involved in a minor violation when he acted as a driver. After this incident, which led them to another state, the case gained federal status. At this time, Deshaawn received a sentence at the state level, which gave the FBI the opportunity to use this. They arrested him, hoping to obtain information about Brittany's disappearance. His defender tried to challenge this decision by insisting that Deshaawn had already served his sentence, but the case was nevertheless brought to court. The FBI also conducted an interrogation with Deshaawn about Brittany's case, but he denied any involvement. In the summer of 2017, Deshaawn agreed to an interrogation with a lie detector in exchange for possible sentence reduction. During the interrogation, the lie detector operator registered 2 answers that seemed suspicious to him. Deshaawn was asked whether he had seen Brittany after her disappearance and whether he was connected in any way to the incident. He answered both questions negatively, but the examiner remained skeptical. Nevertheless, the results of the lie detector had no legal force, and the investigation remained without concrete evidence. In July 2019, the trial against Deshaawn ended, who was finally sentenced to less than 1 year imprisonment for his involvement in an earlier act as a driver. While the investigators searched for evidence of his guilt, there was an unexpected turn. A first informant gave an interview in February and drastically changed his statements. Now he claimed to have seen Brittany 4 times after her disappearance, and pointed out that the first-degree events took place 1 month later, with allegedly a person named Nate being involved. This new version puzzled the investigators, who tried in vain to find Nate. In the following years, the police continued their investigations, considering both suspicions against Deshaawn as well as other possible directions. In the first weeks after Brittany's disappearance, they carefully checked the list of men who had previously been held responsible for similar acts. Among them was the man at the top of the list, Raymond Moody. There was no evidence against him, but the police considered his previous crimes. Moody had spent 21 years in prison for similar offenses, only the girls were not 1, but 7. The age began with 5 and ended with 17 years. Nevertheless, Raymond was the father of 3 children and had started a new life with another woman after a divorce. In the year 2011, Raymond's apartment was searched in connection with the Brittany case. However, no evidence was found. In the year 2020, FBI agents decided to investigate his possible involvement in the disappearance again. This time, they discovered that Raymond had lied about his alibi. According to new information, he was stopped on the 26th of April, one day after the girl's disappearance, in Myrtle Beach for speeding, where he was staying with a girlfriend. This was also confirmed by his companion, which questioned his earlier statements about his whereabouts during these critical days. In the year 2011, Raymond's girlfriend was questioned by the police for the first time, who could not rule out his involvement in an incident. Due to his previous violations, she was invited again for clarification in April 2022. During the interrogation about the day of Brittany's disappearance, she behaved unusually and tried to leave the room, but was convinced to stay. Then she told that Raymond came home on the day after Brittany's disappearance with unclear traces on his face, which he never explained. Regarding the day of disappearance, she mentioned that Raymond suggested temporarily exchanging vehicles. He took her large pickup and gave her his car. This information was a surprise for the investigators. The examination of her mobile phone data that evening revealed, thanks to modern technology, that the phone was near the suspected incident with Brittany. Furthermore, she made a purchase with her credit card the same evening not far from this location. These facts led the investigators to conclude that the woman might have been together with Raymond in the car during the incident. During questioning, she vehemently denied this possibility, assuming that she might have left her phone and credit card in the car. She added that Raymond left the house the same night and returned after 30 minutes without commenting on his absence. In this context, the investigators asked the woman to obtain more information from Raymond, even suggested using a recording device, but later withdrew this suggestion. After the conversation, the investigators observed Raymond's apartment closely for several days and noticed his unusual behavior. He often went out to check something on his car and seemed very worried. This led to them obtaining a search of his apartment, during which they confiscated several phones and other interesting items. However, these items did not bring the needed evidence. When the investigators realized they were on the right track, they decided to use the information from the woman's phones and credit cards for further actions. They planned to arrest her on suspicion of involvement in unauthorized activities, which brought results. When they summoned Raymond for interrogation, they informed him that they intended to arrest his companion, which prompted him to make a surprising confession that he had done everything alone. He described his version of events, which immediately raised doubts among the investigators. According to Raymond, they were driving along the road that evening. He was smoking and noticed Brittany, who came to her car and expressed the desire to join them. After they drove to the river in Georgetown, his companion briefly moved away, and Raymond tried to establish closeness with Brittany, but she refused. As a result, his behavior became reckless. Afterwards, he concealed the evidence of his actions, as his companion could return at any moment. Upon her return, she asked about Brittany, and Raymond answered that friends had picked her up. The same night, he returned to the river to eliminate the traces of his actions. This version seemed implausible to the investigators, and they suspected that Raymond had greatly distorted the true circumstances. It is likely that Raymond exploited the late hour and the absence of passers-by on the street. This version is supported by the fact that the girl suddenly stopped responding to her boyfriend's messages and did not even react when he mentioned that he could tell her mother everything. Raymond claimed that she was still with him in the car at this time. Raymond's confession enabled the investigators to establish his responsibility for what happened. He led them to the place where important items were hidden, and there the police actually found what they were looking for. Through DNA analysis and dental identification, it was determined that the found objects belonged to Brittany. Raymond was charged, and preparations for the trial began. His girlfriend changed her statement and confirmed Raymond's words. The investigators understood that the story was constructed so that the girlfriend escaped responsibility, but they were primarily interested in Raymond. The fact that he precisely indicated the location where the objects were found, which had been hidden for many years, confirmed his involvement in the matter. After 13 years of investigations, Raymond could finally experience the consequences of his actions. In court, he did not change his statement and confessed his guilt. The court process ended relatively quickly. On the 19th of October 2020, Raymond was sentenced to 30 years in prison. At the time of the verdict, he was 62 years old, and the probability that he would be released was low. In his final word, he expressed regret over his actions and admitted to having committed a serious mistake. Ultimately, this complex story was concluded, but to this day, unresolved questions remain that continue to occupy the thoughts of the investigators. In particular, they are still trying to understand why two of their informants made incredible statements against Deshaawn. Both informants were known for their questionable reputation, which from the beginning raised certain doubts about their statements. Presumably, they used publicly available information to harm Deshaawn in exchange for a mitigation of their own sentences. The investigators are also dealing with another question. They have reasons to assume that Raymond might be involved in an incident that happened with a 28-year-old woman in the year 2005. At that time, he lived near the location of the occurrence. However, Raymond denies any involvement, and there is no evidence that would confirm his participation. Therefore, the probability that he receives additional charges remains extremely low.